With different campaigns putting pressure on school resources, parents have been trying to protect recent gains in the Boston public schools. With steps to close the budget gap for the year ahead, parents want to make sure their concerns were in the spotlight. As Mayor Walsh gave his State of the City address tonight, our guest is one of the parent leaders, a member of the Citywide Parent Council, Kenny Jervis. Thank you very much for being with us, Kenny.
Thank you for having me.
We've heard this story before about budget cuts, but how is this year different?
This year is different in many ways. It's the third in succession of years that have had budget cuts. 100 million 2 years ago, 40 million last year. Now we're looking at projected 50 million. The cuts that we've already made within our own schools, in the shared governance that we have. Last year we were making decisions to choose between art and music. This year it's art or science teacher. Those are decisions that we can't be making on the school level. Our children deserve to have qualified teachers in every field. They deserve art, they deserve music, they deserve foreign language. And to be losing, these valuable positions within our schools, and just seeing our schools basically come down to English language arts and math. What's focused on the MCAS or POC, whichever your school does, that's what your children are learning. We deserve better. We see the gains in so many areas across our city, yet our schools are taking a back seat and moving in the past instead of progressing into the future like the rest of the city is.
One cut I read about was the elimination of classes in Japanese. Now, some readers who saw that might say, well, it's not important to learn a foreign language. As long as the kids can speak English well, what's the problem?
Oh, I would say that not learning a foreign language in a city that's growing as fast as ours is very problematic. Even in my field as a chef, learning Spanish is quite essential to moving ahead because your workforce is mainly Spanish speaking. The city is bringing world-class institutions to do business here every day. Foreign languages, just as we have the internet as a tool to connect with the world, being able to communicate in their language would be a great plus for all of our students and all of our citizens and really help us grow.
Now the other thing I've heard about some of these programs that we sometimes refer to as frills, the arts programs, the culture, extended learning, is that they're great not just for engaging parents with options, but for engaging the students who might be most at risk for falling behind.
Yes, and I wouldn't begrudge any school having these extra activities, but we're showing that without being able to fully fund them, we're creating a two-tier system. Some schools are able to offer extended learning time, others are not. And that becomes economic advantage for some families. If your child is in school for that extra hour or 40 minutes, but comes out that means you can work an extra hour into your day, and that you're picking up less time do you have to take away to pick up your children. So there's many inequities in how it's done. If it's going to be done, it needs to be done for all.
Speaking of money, what about the money being chipped in or raised by parents themselves?
It's phenomenal, the amount of fundraising that we have to do. If you are able to retain an art teacher, that comes with no supplies. So, you're doing fundraisers that normally would go to sending your children on a field trip, giving them extra activities, doing fun enrichment stuff. Those fundraisers are being used to buy papers, paints, different materials for your art teacher if you're able to have it. If you have music teacher, you're paying for the instruments, and becomes a huge burden on parents to do that fundraising. If you don't have the material to give that teacher to provide that enrichment, then it's for naught, and it's becoming quite the burden to do effective fundraisers, and you essentially need to hire or become an event planner for a good amount of time to run a successful program. It's not just running a fundraiser for $10,000-$12,000 to send the kids somewhere. It's needing to run an effective fundraiser for $40,000-$50,000 to sustain a program. Some schools are doing that to pay for gym teachers, or after school programs. That is a lot.
The Boston Municipal Research Bureau says one other thing to consider here is you've got some empty seats in the Boston schools. I think their number was 4,000. I know that's yet to be tested, but people are talking about that as an expense, and people say, well, why don't we give some of that space to maybe some charter schools or in-district charter schools? How does that? How do parents feel about that when they hear that?
We understand that there may be seats available. We see, neighborhoods with not a lot of children. My neighborhood especially, South Boston, has had a dramatic change of the demographics. But you see two sides of it. The elementary schools are filled. Kindergarten seats are filled. Kids in South Boston or Dorchester, you are not able to find a kindergarten seat for your 3 and 4-year-old. Yet by the time 6th grade comes along, the families have given up on BPS, given up on the city of Boston to educate their children, and they've looked for a charter seat, they've looked for a parochial seat, or they've mainly just moved away. When you see the town of Brookline struggling to build schools, they're within our city limits, sort of. We surround Brookline, and that's a town that is unable to keep up with demand of the people fleeing Boston, looking for that quality education that Boston is just not providing. And I don't want to say overall, because there's many great programs in Boston. The schools are doing the best they can. Our teachers are working as hard as they can. Communities are rallying around their schools as much as they can. It's just to a point of how much more can we offer. It's difficult to raise the money to stay living in the city with the cost of living, and to also supplement your children's school and the fundraiser. That it becomes very burdensome for a lot of the families here in Boston.
Well, one other thing that the Research Bureau pointed out is that, of course, we all know district schools are in competition for resources with Commonwealth charter schools. Mm-hmm. But he said the state is not fully funding the reimbursement for charter schools.
Yes, and that was written in a letter to the BPS community from Superintendent Chang. And that is something that us parents have been at the State House every year in May and June at the Ways and Means budget hearings. We are asking for full funding of the charter reimbursement. We are asking for max Chapter 70 money. We are asking for full reimbursement of McKinney-Vento, circuit breaker, any bit of funding that's available on the state level to make its way to Boston. And we're calling Senator Warren, Senator Markey, our state representatives in Congress, to find every federal dollar that they can to make its way to Boston. And we need a concerted effort between the parents, school committee, BPS administration, city municipal electeds to advocate both state and federal level to make sure every dollar that's available is made here. Because it's actually a lot of the programs that the federal government mandates and the state government mandates, it's actually costing our city a lot of money. Standardized testing is not cheap. Yeah.
Well, it's also not easy for parents to be standing out in the cold to send a message outside Symphony Hall as the mayor gives his speech, or at least before the speech. What do the parents want the mayor to do with all this?
We want him to commit to our Boston Public Schools. We want him to look truly at the needs of our school. Step down at school-to-school level and see where the money is needed. You just can't come out and say, yes, we give you $1 billion. That's right. That's what it is. And come and find out where that 1 point something billion is going, because it's not reaching the front doors of our schools. You know, we had an audit. We were very excited to see that audit, and we feel like the audit didn't show the cost saving. You know, I mean, the audit cut down money for special needs students. I mean, that is incredulous to us. You know, that we see, you know, since the change over to an inclusion model of schools, we're seeing how that student weighted funding is not to the level it needs to be to create a safe learning environment, not only for the kids in the inclusion classrooms, but for all the kids in general within the school. There has been a lot of difficulties on the school level implementing this full inclusion model. We want it to work. I mean, we all
It's
want it to work.
customized and labor intensive, but it saves money in the long run.
Right, but it has to be done right, and it has to be done in an equitable, quality way for every student to receive the best education that they possibly can.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Kenny Jervis from the Citywide Parent Council. We'll have more news in just a moment.